A teenage boy kneels in the mud at the bottom of a plague pit. It is Prague, 1680. His mother is already gone. His father is coughing blood into a rag. The boy does not have medicine. He does not have a priest. He has only his grandmother's voice in his memory, reciting a poem in a language he barely understands. A Jewish family huddles in a cellar beneath a cathedral in Toledo, 1391. Outside, a mob chants for their blood. The father places his hand on his daughter's head and whispers the same ancient words, not in Spanish, in Hebrew. A Roman centurion watches his third soldier die in an hour. It is AD 165, the Antonine Plague. He has seen barbarians break his lines. He has seen his own sword break. But he has never seen death move this fast. And from a tent across the camp, he hears a Christian slave singing something. The same words, again. There is a chapter of the Bible that Jews have called the Psalm of Evil Occurrences for 3,000 years. And the devil knows it by heart. This is Psalm 91. One day, on a limestone pinnacle overlooking Jerusalem, the tempter himself will quote this psalm to the Son of God. He will use it as a weapon. We will get to that moment on the temple roof, but not yet. First, we have to understand what this psalm actually says, before anyone twisted it. This is not a magic spell. This is not a blank check for invincibility. This is not a license to jump off roofs. This is a poem about a secret hiding place and the God who lives there. By the end of this video, you will know every verse of Psalm 91. You will know why the devil quoted it. And you will know whether its promises are really for you. But let's start at the beginning. Verse 1. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. Two names for God in one sentence. The first is Elyon. It means most high, not just high above the mountains, but above every other power you can name. Angels, demons, empires, plagues, nightmares. All of them are lower than Elyon. The second name is Shaddai, Almighty. But the Hebrew root of Shaddai suggests something more personal. The God who is enough. The one whose chest you can press your ear against and hear a heartbeat. The word for shelter here is setter. It means a hiding place, a cleft in the rock, a cave where enemies cannot find you. In ancient Israel, every village had caves. Every family knew the terror of running to one when raiders appeared on the horizon. The psalmist says God is that cave. Not like a cave. Not as good as a cave. God is the actual hiding place. And then the second half of the verse says something strange. Rest in the shadow. Not run. Not hide. Rest. You only rest in a shadow when you have stopped being afraid of what casts it. A child resting in the shadow of her father does not flinch at every noise. She knows whose shadow it is. So verse 1 sets the table. But verse 2 is where you get in the game. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in whom I trust. Did you catch the shift? Verse 1 describes the person who dwells. Verse 2 becomes that person. The psalm does not ask you to believe that God is a refuge for everyone in general. It asks you to say it with your own mouth. My refuge, my fortress, my God. A fortress in the ancient world was not a single wall. It was layers, an outer rampart, an inner citadel, a tower that could not be toppled. The psalmist says, God is all of those layers wrapped around you. But here's what most people miss about the shadow. You cannot be in a shadow without being close to what casts it. You cannot rest under wings without nestling into feathers. And you cannot call God your fortress if you only visit on Sundays. The poem is building something. And the next verses are about to get very dark. Verse 3. Surely he will save you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly pestilence. The fowler. You have probably never seen one. In ancient Israel, he was the man who trapped birds for a living. He used nets, decoys, and calls that mimicked a mate. The bird thought it was flying toward safety. It was flying toward death. The psalmist says evil works the same way. It uses your own desires as bait. It makes destruction sound like a friend calling your name. And you cannot see the snare until your foot is already in it. But the second part of verse 3 hits closer to home for us. The deadly pestilence. A word that means something specific in Hebrew, dever. It is not abstract evil. It is the thing that takes your child before breakfast. It is the cough that does not stop. It is the fever that turns a strong man into a skeleton in 6 days. The people who first sang this psalm knew plague. They knew the terror of waking up and smelling death from the house next door. They did not have vaccines. They did not have hospitals. They had this poem. Verse 4. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart. This is the verse that makes people cry, because it is not military language anymore. It is maternal. In Deuteronomy chapter 32, Moses describes God as an eagle that stirs up its nest, hovers over its young, spreads its wings to catch them, and carries them on its pinions. That is the image here. Not a chicken clucking in a coop. An eagle that teaches its eaglets to fly by shoving them off the cliff, and then catches them before they hit the rocks. God's faithfulness is not a warm blanket. It is a shield and a rampart. The shield stops the arrow. The rampart stops the army. But both of them are made of something softer than steel. They are made of who God is. Stay with me. Verse 5. You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day. Two kinds of fear. The terror of night is the fear of what you cannot see. You wake up at 3 in the morning, and your mind plays every catastrophe on a loop. What if my child is hurt? What if I lose my job? What if the test comes back positive? You cannot fight what you cannot see. So the terror of night paralyzes you. The arrow that flies by day is different. That is the attack you see coming. The enemy with a weapon. The boss who wants to fire you. The diagnosis on the paper. You can see that arrow. You might even dodge it. But the psalm says you will not fear either one. Not because you are brave, because you are covered. Verse 6. Nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday. The darkness belongs to the pestilence. That is when fevers spike, when breathing stops, when the body gives up. But the midday belongs to the plague too. The destruction that happens in broad daylight, when you thought you were safe. The psalmist is not pretending these things do not exist. He is not saying you will never get sick. He is saying you will not be afraid of them. And that is a different kind of miracle. Josephus, the Jewish historian who watched Rome burn Jerusalem in AD 70, wrote about pestilence sweeping through the Roman legions. He described how Jewish captives would sing psalms in the camps at night, and the Roman guards, hardened killers, would go quiet to listen. The guards did not understand the words, but they understood that these people were not afraid of dying. That terrified the guards more than any plague. Verse 7, 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. This is not a promise that believers never die in plagues. This is not a promise of statistical immunity. This is a promise of presence in the statistical nightmare. The Hebrew numbers are not random. 1,000 at your left, 10,000 at your right. That is not a battlefield. That is an apocalypse. Bodies piled so high you cannot see the horizon. And the psalm says you will watch it happen, and you will still be standing. Not because you are stronger than the plague, because your hiding place is deeper than the grave. The early church read this verse during the Antonine Plague. Eusebius, the church historian, recorded that Christians in Rome buried not only their own dead, but the pagans' dead as well. They walked into houses where everyone else had fled. They held hands with the dying. They quoted verse 7 while the rats ran over their feet. They did not survive because of the psalm. Many of them died. They died holding the psalm in their mouths. And that is the part most modern teachers skip. Psalm 91 is not a vaccine. It is a hand to hold while the virus does its worst. But the psalm is building to something even stranger. Because the next verse says, you will not just survive. You will watch the wicked fall around you. Let me explain what that actually means. Because it is not what you think next. So far, we have seen the shelter, the shadow, the feathers, the shield, the wings. The psalm has walked us through the terror of night, the arrow by day, the pestilence in darkness, the plague at noon. It has promised that 1,000 may fall at your side, but it will not come near you. But the psalm is building to something. And the devil knew exactly which verse to rip out of context. Before we go deeper, have you ever quoted Psalm 91 in a hard moment? Maybe when you were scared of a diagnosis, or when a child was sick, or when you could not sleep at 3 in the morning. Tell me below. I read every single comment. And if you want more Bible explainers like this, make sure you are subscribed. Because the next section is where people get confused, where they start to wonder if this psalm is really for them, or only for superheroes of faith. Verse 8, you will only observe with your eyes and see the punishment of the wicked. This verse makes some people uncomfortable. It sounds like gloating, like watching your enemy get what they deserve, and smiling. But that is not what the Hebrew means. The word for observe is raya, to see, to behold, to witness. And the word for punishment is shuma, repayment, recompense. The verse is not saying you will enjoy watching the wicked burn. It is saying you will survive long enough to see that evil does not win. When you have been the victim, when someone has hurt you, cheated you, abused you, the deepest wound is not the pain. It is the fear that they got away with it, that the universe is not just, that God does not care. Verse 8 says, "You will see," not because you are vindictive, because justice is real. Verse 9 and 10, "If you say, 'The Lord is my refuge,' and you make the Most High your dwelling, no harm will overtake you, no disaster will come near your tent." The word dwelling here is not a house. It is a habitation, a place where you actually live, not just visit. You can visit a refuge during a storm and leave when the sun comes out. But a dwelling is where you keep your pots and your blankets and your children's toys. You do not evacuate from a dwelling. You stay. The psalm says, "Make God your address." And if you do, no harm will overtake you. The Hebrew word for overtake is ana, to meet, to encounter, to happen upon. The promise is not that harm will never come near. It is that harm will not catch you. It will not sneak up from behind. You will see it coming, because you are already looking from the shelter. But then comes the verse that changed everything. The verse the devil memorized. The verse that would be whispered in dungeons, in hospitals, on battlefields, and one day, on a pinnacle in Jerusalem. Verse 11 and 12. Verse 11 and 12. "For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. They will lift you up in their hands, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone." This is the verse that became famous. This is the verse that mothers in the Middle Ages embroidered onto their children's tunics. This is the verse that soldiers scratched onto the walls of their barracks in every war since David. The Hebrew verb for command is yitten. It is not a suggestion. It is not a gentle request. It is a royal decree from the throne room of heaven. The same word used when a king orders his army to march. God does not ask angels to watch over you. He commands them. Now watch what happens next. To guard you in all your ways. The word for guard is shamar, the same word used when a shepherd watches over his flock through the night, when a sentinel stands on the city wall and refuses to close his eyes. Angels do not sleep. They have not slept since the morning stars sang together. And they have been watching you longer than you have been alive. They will lift you up in their hands, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. This is not about tripping on a curb. This is about the 1,000 small disasters that could end you. A misstep on a mountain path, a rockfall that misses you by inches, a car that swerves at the last second. Most of the time, you never even know you were saved. The angels lift you up, set you back on solid ground, and vanish into the air like they were never there. But there is a problem, and the problem is the devil. Because Satan quoted this psalm to Jesus in the wilderness, he left out 3 small words. 3 words that change everything. Let me show you exactly what he did. Matthew chapter 4, verse 5. Then the devil took Jesus to the holy city and had him stand on the highest point of the temple. "If you are the Son of God," he said, "throw yourself down. For it is written, He will command his angels concerning you, and they will lift you up in their hands, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. Did you catch it? Satan quoted Psalm 91, verses 11 and 12. But he deleted the phrase, "in all your ways." The original psalm does not say, "Angels will guard you no matter what you do." It says they will guard you in all your ways, meaning the paths God has already laid out for you. Not off a cliff on a dare. Not into a stunt designed to force God's hand. The protection is for the journey God assigned, not for the detours you invent to test Him. Jesus knew the missing phrase. He had memorized the same psalm as a child in Nazareth. So he answered the devil with Deuteronomy, chapter 6, verse 16. Do not put the Lord your God to the test. You cannot use Psalm 91 as a trampoline. You cannot use it as a fire insurance policy you light yourself. The psalm is for trust, not for tricks. Hold that thought. Verse 13. You will tread on the lion and the cobra. You will trample the great lion and the serpent. This verse echoes the oldest promise in the Bible. Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. God tells the serpent that the offspring of the woman will crush his head. That is what trample means here. Not a casual walk in the zoo. A victory stomp. The lion in ancient Israel was not a metaphor. Lions lived in the hills. They took sheep. They took children. A single lion could destroy a village's livelihood in one night. And the cobra, the viper that hid in the grass and struck before you heard the rattle. These were the two things no one wanted to face. The king of beasts and the silent killer. The psalm says you will walk on both of them. Not because you are stronger, because the one you dwell with has already broken their fangs. The Talmud records that Jewish families recited Psalm 91 before bed every night. They called it the Psalm of Evil Occurrences, Shir Shel Pegayim. Not because they were superstitious, because they knew what lurked in the dark. They had seen Roman soldiers drag their neighbors away. They had felt the ground shake under the hooves of cavalry. They knew the night was full of terrors. And this psalm was their nightlight. But here is the part nobody tells you. Psalm 91 has been recited over 10,000 graves where the person still died. Mothers whispered it over children who never woke up. Fathers prayed it through plagues that took their whole village. And sometimes, often, the protection did not look like survival. Does that make the psalm a lie? No. It makes it a promise from a God who never promised us tomorrow. He promised himself. The early church father Origen, writing in the 3rd century, said something remarkable about Psalm 91. He said, "The angels guard you in all your ways, but your ways may lead you to a Roman cross. And the angels will stand guard there too. They will not stop the nails, but they will carry you home the moment your eyes close." That changes everything. Because if Psalm 91 only worked when you survived, then every martyr in history died without a promise. But they did not die without a promise. They died with the promise. The angels were there. The shelter was there. The shadow covered them, even as the sword fell. So the psalm is not broken. Our expectation of what it guarantees is broken. Now we are ready. Ready to go back to that limestone pinnacle ready to see what Jesus understood about this psalm that Satan did not. Ready to hear God's own voice at the end of the poem, the part most people skip entirely. Now, back to that limestone pinnacle. The temple in Jerusalem rose 400 feet above the Kidron Valley. From the top, you could see the red hills of Moab on a clear day. Priests had to climb stairs cut into the stone. One wrong step and you were gone. No railing, no warning, just air and then the rocks below. Jesus has been in the wilderness for 40 days. No food, no water, no sleep longer than an hour. His body is a skeleton wrapped in skin. His lips are cracked. His throat is dust. And the tempter says, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down." Not if as in doubt, if as in challenge. Prove it. Show me. Do the thing no one else can do. Jump off the temple and let the angels catch you. It is right there in the psalm. Psalm 91, verse 11. You know it. I know it. So do it. Satan quotes scripture from memory. He does not stumble over the Hebrew. He knows the cadence, the rhythm, the holy words. And he deletes 3 small words, in all your ways. Because the devil knows that if you remove the path, you remove the protection. The promise of angels is not a net under a tightrope walker you built yourself. It is a convoy escort on the road God already mapped. Jesus looks at the stones below. He looks at the tempter, and he quotes back a different verse. Deuteronomy 6, verse 16. Do not put the Lord your God to the test. This is not a psalm for stuntmen. This is not a prayer for daredevils. This is not a formula for forcing miracles. This is a love song between a frightened person and the God who hides them. Jesus does not reject Psalm 91. He protects it. He refuses to turn it into a weapon. Because the moment you use the psalm to test God, you are no longer dwelling in the shelter. You are standing on the roof, alone, with nothing but air beneath your feet. Now the psalm shifts. From here to the end, God speaks in first person. Not the psalmist describing God, God describing himself. Verse 14. Because he loves me, says the Lord, I will rescue him. I will protect him, for he acknowledges my name. The Hebrew word for loaves here is chashak. It means to cling to delight in, to bind yourself so tightly to someone that you cannot tell where you end and they begin. It is the same word used in Deuteronomy when God says he loved Israel and chose them, not because they were great, but because he clung to them. Rescue and protection are not rewards for good behavior. They are the reflex of a God who cannot help himself when his children are in danger. I will protect him, for he acknowledges my name. To acknowledge God's name is not to say a creed. It is to know who he is and to act like it. When you are afraid, you say his name. When you are alone, you whisper it. When the pestilence stalks at midnight, you open your mouth, and the name comes out like a sword. Verse 15. He will call on me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. Read that again. I will be with him in trouble. Not around trouble. Not after trouble. Not instead of trouble. In trouble. The fire does not get canceled. The flood does not get rerouted. The diagnosis does not get erased from the chart. But the God of angel armies sits down in the ashes next to you. He puts his arm around your shoulder. He says, I am here. I am not leaving. And I will get you through this or carry you over it. That is the shelter. That is the shadow. That is the secret place. Verse 16. With long life I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. The Hebrew word for salvation is Yeshua. It is the same root as the name Jesus. Yeshua. Salvation. The psalm does not define long life in years. It defines it in presence. A life spent in the shelter is long enough, no matter when it ends. Because the end is not a wall. The end is a door. And on the other side of the door is the salvation, the Yeshua, that the psalm has been pointing to all along. Philadelphia, 1918. The Spanish flu is killing more people than the Great War. Churches close their doors because the pews are full of the dead. Morgues stack bodies on sidewalks. In a one-room tenement on the Lower East Side, a 7-year-old boy is burning with fever. His skin is the color of ash. His breath comes in shallow gasps. His grandfather is a shoemaker from Minsk. He does not have medicine. He does not have a doctor. He has nothing but a worn siddur, a Jewish prayer book, and the words his own father whispered over him when he was a boy in the old country. He opens to Psalm 91. He begins to whisper in Hebrew. The boy's eyes are closed. The grandfather keeps whispering. The boy survives. But across the street, 100 others do not. A mother recites the same psalm over her daughter, and the daughter dies before dawn. Did the psalm fail her? No. The psalm was never a vaccine. It was a hand to hold while the virus did its worst. And that grandfather, when he buried his neighbor's child the next day, he whispered the same psalm over that small grave too. Because Psalm 91 is not for the ones who live. It is for the ones who show up. It is for the ones who dwell. And the ones who dwell never die alone. The angels command. The feathers cover. The shadow hides. And at the end of all things, the Yeshua, the salvation, arrives. That is the psalm that even the devil quoted. And he still lost. So that is Psalm 91. Every verse, from the shelter of the Most High to the salvation that waits at the end. 3 takeaways before we close. 1. Psalm 91 is not a prosperity gospel contract. It was written by people who knew plague, war, and the midnight terror. They did not sing it because they never got hurt. They sang it because they needed something to hold on to while they were bleeding. The psalm is not a promise that bad things will not happen. It is a promise that God happens in the middle of them. 2. The devil can quote scripture. Memorizing the Bible does not make you safe. It makes you dangerous if you forget the context. Satan knew Psalm 91 better than most pastors do. But he left out 3 words, in all your ways. Always read the verses before and after. Always ask where the path is. The angels guard you on the road God laid out, not on the cliffs you jump from to prove a point. 3. The most repeated phrase in Psalm 91 is not protection or angels or even salvation. It is I will. God says it 5 times in verses 14 through 16. I will rescue. I will protect. I will answer. I will deliver. I will satisfy. The whole psalm is a conversation. You say, "You are my refuge." And God says, "I will be with you in trouble." Not around trouble. Not after trouble. In trouble. That is the secret place. That is the shadow of the Almighty. And no devil can quote his way out of that. Which verse of Psalm 91 has meant the most to you in a hard season? Is it verse 4, the feathers? Verse 11, the angels? Or verse 15, I will be with him in trouble? Tell me below. I read every single one. If you want more verse-by-verse breakdowns like this, hit subscribe. And watch this video next, the one psalm Jesus quoted more than any other. The one that begins, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Because Psalm 22 and Psalm 91 are 2 sides of the same coin. One is for the night before the battle. The other is for the battle itself. But for now, remember this. This is not a magic spell. This is not a blank check. This is not a license to test God. This is an invitation to dwell. So dwell.